Hi there. I'm coming to you at the beginning of week 2 from a very crazy week for me, and it sort of involves my granddaughter. This is Emmeline. Say hello. Hi. I have her on my lap because she's an attention-getting strategy because she's so cute. And I'm doing that because I'm cueing you to the fact that in part 2 of the project for this week, part 2 of the book, and project number 2 addresses some characteristics of learning, and one category of those characteristics is about attention and the role that attention plays in learning something. So that's why I have this amazing attention-getting strategy right here. Whew, I had to move into the shade. The heat is getting to me today. It's a very hot one here. I'm sitting outside right now because I'm currently in the midst of COVID quarantine. My family, including one of my children and her daughter, who you just saw, we were at an event a couple weeks ago and got exposed to COVID, the lot of us. And then we were all over here for something a few days ago, or I should say a week ago, and we all came down. We all got sick, tested positive, even the baby. And so we have quarantined here, and I'm feeling much better, thank you. But it's been a crazy week. So assuming you're watching this at the beginning of week 2, I will have reviewed the results from exam number 1 very soon, very quickly, and I will post a summary of that. And if I have to adjust any scores based on my post hoc analysis of your work, I will do so, and I'll explain everything to you about that. But this week we move on to part 2 of the class, which has to do with addressing quantitative or positivist research models and the value of implementing models that can get at causation. That is, a variable that is causing another variable to change. You'll have to excuse the noise of the city here. So this is so important, and it relates to some of the things that were presented in part 1 very much. First of all, I asked you in part 1 to reflect on some of the theories that you have found has informed your practice as educators. And a lot of you said some of the really common and most influential learning theories, such as behaviorism or constructivism. Some of you mentioned social learning theory. But one student mentioned a theory that was sort of her own design, and it was and it may be because she is a special ed teacher, but her theory is that she operates under is that behavior is always a form of communication. And I'm not sure if she was thinking about the concept of behavior as misbehavior or a term that we apply when somebody is a behavior problem. It relates to how they act in class with respect to getting along. But from a behaviorist perspective, that what she said is so true about learning. Behavior is always a form of communication, and what it communicates to a teacher is whether or not somebody has learned what you want them to learn. Because the only evidence that we have that somebody has learned anything at all in what we're trying to get them to learn is if their behavior changes. That's evidence-based right there. We want to change their behavior. We want to change how they behave or what they do when they're answering multiple choice questions, or their behavior, if it's a psychomotor skill, their behavior on a basketball court, or if it's an attitude, their behavior in terms of what choices they make in life. So I thought that particular theoretical perspective was rather, had a certain level of brilliance to it. So I want to thank that student in particular for bringing that up. I also asked you to reflect on the misconceptions that were listed in this book in part 1, and the one that you found the most interesting with respect to your own beliefs, and almost overwhelmingly students in this class indicated that the learning styles misconception was the one that you were laboring under, and perhaps still do labor under, this idea that learning styles exist. And it's really an interesting thing to consider. I posted the video of Willingham discussing studies related to learning styles, and on this page here below, I post another video of somebody who I really, really respect and admire, who's done a lot of work in learning theory and applied learning theory. And anyway, take a look at that video too. It clarifies some of the experiments that were done in order to test the hypothesis that people learn best when the information that's presented aligns with their identified learning style. And so anyway, all of that is very interesting because it relates to, you have some beliefs and then you have evidence. And this week in part 2, I'm asking you to consider evidence related to, and I present some information about how evidence is inherent in the Virginia Literacy Act. And I'm also asking you to consider evidence related to 3 characteristics of learning that are presented in part 2 of this book. And that has to do with perception, attention, and memory. And I think you'll find all of that very interesting, because evidence and empirical evidence relates to gaining knowledge from experience, gaining knowledge through observation. That's what evidence is. And we are living in a time when evidence is not as valued as it should be in a lot of really important ways, certainly in education. And I'll give you a good example. We've been operating for 20 years now, more than 20 years now, under this assumption that high-stakes testing is going to make everything better in education in America. It's a huge paradigm that we're operating under. And the problem with that is that it's an idea that somebody has decided, or a group of people decided was a very good idea at some point. The problem is there's very, very, very little evidence that suggests that this model that we're operating under has actually translated into improving the amount and type of learning that's gone on from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And literacy levels continue to drop, and as well as other measures. Mathematics has made some strides, but it's we need a readjustment about valuing the evidence, and maybe that's just become popular in general in culture not to value evidence that much. I unfortunately witnessed the presidential debates this week, something I definitely wanted to avoid once it got started, because it was disappointing from start to finish for both candidates. I can't believe that this is what we are faced with as a nation right now. And I'm not one candidate or the other right now as far as what I want to communicate to you, but I will say I continue to be shocked that one of the candidates lies just regularly. And the reason why I know that they're lies is that we have evidence that what is being said is untruthful. Saying that the election was stolen in 2020, you could say that all you want, and you might be operating under the notion that if you say it enough, that people will just begin to think that it's the truth. If you say it enough, The problem with saying that the election was stolen or there was massive fraud is that it has been exhaustively investigated, exhaustively. And investigators have found small instances of irregularities and there's been no pattern that influenced and affected one candidate over the other. But it has been exhaustive, hundreds of avenues. There is literally no evidence to support the idea that the election was stolen, and yet we have a candidate who continues to say it. Said it to us all during the debate. And in fact, you could look at so many other things that was said. Most of what was said in that regard by that candidate, and they were not truthful at all. And yet it doesn't seem to matter that much to a lot of people. And I am telling you right now, not to be political, I'm telling you that as educators, as thoughtful educators, you need to value evidence. We all need to value evidence. And that's what being a science-minded person is. Even when it goes against what you think your beliefs are. Learning styles, multiple intelligences, all of that sound right, don't they? They sound like, of course, that makes perfect sense. It explains a lot about how people are different. And it might explain a lot about how people are different. Unfortunately, it doesn't explain a lot about what is the best way for people to learn certain things. And so you need to rely on evidence and not intuition or just flat out beliefs when it comes to important things like that. So as we continue this journey, you're going to head into part 2, and you're going to look at the positivist approaches to scientific methodology when it comes to educational research. And I hope you find them fascinating. And I know that we're going through this at a very quick pace, but just hang on, enjoy the ride, and hopefully, again, let me know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding what you have are expected to learn. And after you take the practice test for this week, please contact me if there's anything that you have questions about. And if there's anything you have questions about regarding the project for this book, don't hesitate to reach out as well. Anyway, hope you have a great week too.